Hello. Welcome to the session of the closing session of the Youth Global Disability Summit. My name is Paula Hearn. I work with the Secretariat of the International Disability Alliance. The Youth GDS is co-hosted by the International Disability Alliance, Atlas Alliance, through the Youth Mental Health Norway, and it's supported by the Government of Norway. I'm going to briefly explain some of the features of today's webinar. So this webinar is being recorded. There is international sign. There is language interpretation in English, in Spanish, and CART in English. A CC button on your screen will enable these captions. If you need captions in a different window, the link is in the chat box. Kindly take a few seconds to enable the language of your choice in the language options. Again, that's at the bottom of your screen. There is an option to mute original audio. Please do not select this option. If you do, you might miss some of the parts of the audio. So let's take 10 seconds so you can select the language of your choice in the language option button. Should you have questions for panelists, kindly use the Q&A option or leave your questions in the chat box. Our team is monitoring both and will try to respond to your questions in the course of the event where possible. So we have time. We hope to have time for questions when participants may be able to be invited to ask questions. Please note, we cannot put cameras on for participants due to the limitations on the platform. Where time is an issue, priority will be given to live answering questions that are relevant to the discussion which have been presented. Should you have any accessibility issues, please send a private message to the host account or email, which is webinars@ida/secretariat.org. And the team will try and resolve that issue the best of their ability. We request all speakers to kindly keep to times and ensure that they are speaking slow enough for the interpreters and captioners to follow. We would like to thank the logistics and the communication teams at the International Disability Alliance for their hard work and consideration in enabling the participation of all of us here today. Thank you.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matias Ferreira. I am the president of the Latin American Union of Blind People. This organization is at a regional level. It's for blind and visually impaired people, and it has a presence in Latin American countries. On this occasion, I will be together moderating this panel of the closing of the summit with several colleagues. I would like to remind you all and highlight the novelty that this youth summit represent, because we've been streaming live for 24 hours. We started at 12 European Central Time, and we've been carrying on with roundtables and discussions in Asia, the Pacific, Central Asia, Middle East, North Africa, Europe, and we've reached the last panels at the Americas time zone. I would like to know if, well, all speakers are prepared and are ready, and before ending my remarks, I would like to introduce the speakers once I know if they're ready. Well, I will also like to mention that in this historical summit, everyone had the chance to discuss topics such as inclusive education, independent living, matters related to employment, leisure, the participation of young people in organization for people with disabilities, political participation in general, and the institutionalization. I think it's been a very interesting summit, very innovative, and I'm very happy to be here with you today for the closing ceremony. I would like to remind you as well that we've done a call for action whereby all stakeholders such as public and private organization, education organizations as well, associations, families, governments, they all can join us in this call for action to start acting as well. I would like to introduce, without further ado, I would like to introduce our first panelist that will be here today with us. I would like to introduce Juan Ángel de Gobella. He is the president of the Inter-American Network of People with Disabilities and the Realities Network. He is an activist. He is very young. He started with this activity a long time ago. He works in defending the rights of people with disabilities. He's also a friend of mine and a colleague in the fight in the Latin American region. Juan Ángel, if you're connected, I would like to say hello to you, welcome you to this session and listen to your words. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our honored guests, to all of the president of the disabled organizations in Latin America. I send my greetings. I'm happy to be here today for this important summit. And so, yes, 24 hours. I've been online watching the presentations from Australia, from around the world, and now we're at Latin America. And so many of the young people have recognized how much things have changed. And so the movement across the world has focused on young people with disabilities. And our voices are being heard. I know that for many people, they have felt marginalized, pushed aside, and now we're taking center stage. Youth with disability. I am 40. But I have been a long time youth leader. I was president of the Youth Federation of the Deaf Youth Section. And so that was an international, a worldwide movement of deaf youth. And that was my first step or foray into the deaf world, learning about sign language, learning about deaf people's rights. I learned so much through that involvement, whether that was working with people who are deaf, people who have mobility issues, people who were blind. There are so many young people, and our problems exist. And there are barriers that we experience. So barriers if you are mobility challenged, barriers if you are blind in accessing information in a format that works for you. So it is very important that all of us across disability work collaboratively to address those barriers. Whether you are blind, I am deaf, you are in a wheelchair, it's very important that all of us are working collectively and collaboratively in order to achieve our goals. There are people with many, many opportunities for us to work together collectively to share our insights and learnings with each other. So it's human rights for all of us, human rights to education, human right for employment, human right for social and cultural engagement. So we have so many young people, and I speak to the Latin America area, where the network of young people is so wonderful. And so In our organizations, we are specifically working to create and empower opportunities for deaf youth, youth with disabilities. Looking at an intersectional lens, women and girls are often the most vulnerable within our disability organizations. And so we need to seek leadership opportunities for them so that they have knowledge about their human rights and to be able to be part of the movement that lobbies government for change. And so I'm very happy to be present today in this youth summit. I'm very happy to work with my Latin American colleagues and our moderator today, Matthias. Thank you so much for your work. I'm very proud of the work that young people are doing to be so actively involved as activists. So I'm very happy to be involved this afternoon. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Juan
Thank
Ángel.
you so much, Juan Ángel, for your words. Well,
Conocemos de tu trabajo,
we know about the work that you carry out, that you're also about your significant role. It's true that young people need to become leaders in our organizations as well. I would like to express my gratitude to Juan Ángel once again, and now I will play a video from the Vice Minister of Development of Norway, Mrs. George Starher. Thank you.
Dear friends, thank you so much for inviting me to take part in the Youth Summit. This summit is a very important part of the Global Disability Summit. The success of the Global Disability Summit depends on close collaboration with all of you. My government has high aspirations for the Oslo Summit. I look forward to listening to heads of state and governments from various countries, persons with disabilities and their organizations, heads of UN organizations and high-level representatives from the private sector. I look forward to learning how participants will commit to change and contribute to ensuring that the human rights of persons with disabilities are fulfilled. I think it's really impressive that you have now a 24-hour session behind you where you have gone through and adopted the Youth Charter. We have all heard repeatedly that the young represent the future. We rarely hear that you represent the present. In Europe, the population is aging, but in many parts of the world, the picture is very different. On the African continent, the median age is 19.7 years. So yes, you do represent the future, but the reason why it's particularly important to present the Youth Charter to the Global Disability Summit is because in many parts of the world, youth make up the vast majority. And too often, you are a silent majority because you are not heard. Youth with disabilities and your organizations have a very important role to play in both the shaping of and the follow-up of the Global Disability Summit. And I can assure you that we will pay great attention to the action points of the Youth Charter. I believe that the vision for the summit is as important for the Youth Summit as for the GDS itself. Promoting equality, including combating stigma and discrimination. How we treat and include persons with disabilities is in many ways the litmus test of who we are as a society. I firmly believe that the Global Disability Summit can be a game changer in the way we address disability rights and inclusion. Our common slogan is commit to change, and genuine change is what we need in order to achieve more inclusive communities. Norway will also present commitments at the summit. Our commitments are rooted in our new strategy for promoting disability inclusive development. This strategy will guide our development cooperation going forward. The year 2030 is the deadline for reaching the Sustainable Development Goals. It is approaching fast. The pandemic has not made this easier. The involvement and contribution of youth and other persons with disabilities is therefore more important than ever if we are to deliver on our promise of leaving no one behind. The Global Disability Summit will be important for mobilizing commitments and to raise awareness of the importance of inclusion. But the real work starts after, when commitments are to be realized. I thank you for your valuable contributions to making the Global Disability Summit a success.
Bueno, muchas gracias a la viceministra.
Thank you very much to the Vice Minister and their message. As they said, the situation of the youth is very diverse in the whole world, and it changes depending on the region. And I think that is a message we have to take into account for all the parts interested in youth development. Now, we're going to go through a video message by the MOG of the Secretary General for the United Nations. I apologize if I don't pronounce the name right. We're going to listen to her message in the next video.
Hello everyone, dear
Hola a
friends,
todos,
dear
queridos
colleagues.
amigos, queridos
Warm
colegas,
greetings to
calurosos
each one of
saludos
you.
a cada uno de
My name
ustedes.
is Jayatma
Mi nombre es
Ruikamanaike,
Yayatma
and I am the United
Ruikamanaike
Nations
y
Secretary
soy
General's Envoy on Youth.
la
It
enviada
is
del
my
Secretario
great
General sobre la
pleasure to
Juventud.
be
Es un
here
gran placer
today
estar aquí
for
hoy
the
para
closing
la
session of the
sesión
Global
de clausura de la Global Disability Summit 2022.
I want to begin
Quiero
by
empezar
thanking the
agradeciéndoles a los
organizers, the
organizadores, la
International
International Disability
Alliance,
Alliance,
the
la
Atlas
Atlas
Youth
Alliance,
Mental Health Norway,
la Youth
UNICEF,
Mental
and
Health
the
Norway,
Government of
UNICEF y
Norway.
el gobierno de Noruega por su amable invitación. Quiero también felicitar a todos los jóvenes con y sin discapacidades que han participado durante toda esta cumbre, que trabajando para cambiar, para hacer un cambio, para mejorar en los movimientos colectivos y organizaciones. En todo el mundo, jóvenes como ustedes están demostrando su resiliencia, su impulso, su creatividad a la luz de los desafíos que se nos presentan a causa de la COVID-19. Hemos visto un cambio fundamental en la forma en que las generaciones jóvenes de hoy están utilizando su poder para mostrar inequidades subyacentes y provocar el cambio transformativo. Las gentes jóvenes no solo están liderando el cambio en sus comunidades locales, están exigiendo un escaño en la mesa de la toma de decisiones. Sin embargo, los jóvenes con discapacidades siguen siendo poblaciones de las más excluidas, con casi ninguna representación a nivel nacional, regional e internacional, especialmente en el hemisferio sur. Esta es una violación de sus derechos y obstaculiza su contribución a la realización de la Agenda del Desarrollo Sostenible para el beneficio de todos nosotros. Eso es porque que la participación de las más marginalizados, los jóvenes marginalizados, incluyendo los jóvenes con discapacidades, es una prioridad clave en la estrategia de los jóvenes de los Estados Unidos, Jóvenes 2030, que orienta nuestro trabajo para ellos, para apuntar una participación significativa, inclusiva y segura de jóvenes con discapacidades. Yo creo que deben ocurrir dos cosas. Primero, debemos reconocer que los jóvenes no son un grupo homogéneo. Al aplicar la lente interseccional a nuestras lentes, podemos entender los obstáculos y los cambios estructurales que afectan las vidas de los jóvenes en su diversidad. También tenemos que evitar poner a los jóvenes en silos, reconociendo que los jóvenes con disabilidades no solo quieren hablar de discapacidades, sino que les preocupan temas como el cambio climático, equidad de género, paz, seguridad, innovación, tecnología. Segundo, las instituciones y los encargados de la toma de decisiones deben rendir cuentas y asegurarse que las políticas y herramientas existentes se apliquen informalmente. Para nosotros en las Naciones Unidas incluye la implementación eficaz de la Convención de los Derechos de Personas con Discapacidades, la estrategia de inclusión de discapacidad de la Unión y la estrategia juvenil de la Unión, que son mecanismos complementarios que nos guían para fomentar la participación significativa de jóvenes con discapacidades. Un enfoque especial en este sentido es asegurar espacios seguros y accesibles para todos. Celebro la Carta Juvenil como una importante contribución a esto, añadiendo temas claves y transversales como educación, participación, equidad de género, estigma y discriminación, por mencionar unos cuantos. Realmente estoy muy ansiosa por trabajar junto con ustedes para lograr un mundo más equitativo, justo y sostenible para todos nosotros, sin dejar a ningún joven atrás.
Muchas gracias a la enviada especial.
Thank you very much to the special envoy.
Quería presentar las disculpas porque tuvimos algún inconveniente en la interpretación al español al inicio del video, pero luego se ha solucionado. Quiero presentar ahora a nuestra segunda
Introduce now
presentadora.
our second presenter,
A la señora Diane Keita,
Mrs. Diane Crater, from the Population Fund of the UN.
Muchísimas gracias. Gracias. Dear young leaders, thank you for being here on an incredible 24-hour-long journey that this first ever Youth with Disability Forum has taken us through. To the youth at this summit, you inspire us every day to make this world a more inclusive, just and accessible place. Your commitment and dedication and tireless advocacy has not gone unnoticed. I would like to thank the organizer for inviting us, IDA, UNICEF, and the Atlas Alliance and the Youth Mental Health Norway. This is an important event for us as we look to ensure the meaningful participation of leadership and inclusion of young persons with disability in the work of the United Nations, and not just as lip service, but for real. The right of the persons with disability, particularly young persons with disability, are critical for the United Nations to the successful implementation of the 2030 Agenda and to the UNFPA's goal to promote human rights and gender equality for all. As many of you may know, there are nearly 180 million young persons with disability in the world. Yet, far too often, they are left out of participation, left out of policies, and left out of decision-making. Young persons with disabilities are up to 4 times more likely to face violence, and many young persons with disability do not have access to comprehensive sexuality education and SRS services. They face many misconceptions when it comes to sexuality and reproduction. Yet, young persons with disability have tremendous experience, expertise, creativity, and dynamism that can help to break the negative cycle of discrimination, stigma, and stereotypes that persons with disability face from the very beginning of their lives. This is exactly why UNFPA has created We Decide program centers on promoting social inclusion and equality for women, girls, and young persons with disability. This means living free of gender-based violence and being able to access sexual and reproductive health services and exercise their rights. Through the We Decide program, UNFPA in Ecuador has supported the development of an initiative called Igual que tú, just like you, using capacity development and technology. This initiative is aimed at ensuring young persons with disability have access to sexual and reproductive health information. The website for the project was designed by a young blind person. I also want to take a moment to honor the tireless efforts of organizations such as Colectivas Sordas Feministas, a collective formed by deaf women, including young women in Ecuador, women and girls, human rights defenders, such as these inspire us to pay attention to the barriers faced by persons with disability, and then work to dismantle those barriers. Dear listeners, through the We Decide program, UNFPA has also worked with the National Council of the Judiciary in Ecuador to develop accessible training material for legal staff to ensure women and girls with disability have access to justice. Similar efforts are taking place in Morocco and Mozambique through the program. This energy of young people with disability needs to be harnessed and provided with leadership space, particularly in furthering the UN disability inclusion strategies and the UN Youth Strategy, the Youth 2030, and other key youth relevant agenda. Young persons with disabilities are part of this conversation because they are insisting on having a seat at the table. This 24 hours youth forum is evidence that young persons with disabilities perspective have an impact. For example, we have youth with disability here attending this forum who are taking on the leadership roles and have established a youth-led organization of persons with disabilities, which is being led by young women with disability. The global network of young persons with disability is working closely with the UNFPA and other UN agencies to create accessibility for all, including online using innovation and assistive technology to break the digital divide for young persons with disability who do not have access to the internet. I am really excited to hear more about the Youth Charter and hear about the conversation that will take place during the Global Summit in the next few days. Intergenerational policymaking is not something that comes easily. We hope that with your leadership, you will hold us accountable to the commitment made here today through the Youth Charter and the global commitment fostered during the Global Disability Summit and enshrined in the Convention on the Right of Persons with Disability. I thank you.
Muchas gracias, Dayan.
Thank you very much, Diane.
El mensaje que nos comparte, sobre todo teniendo en cuenta el protagonismo que ha habido en esta
particularly taking into account the importance of this youth section. I wanted to pass the microphone to Mr. Pascal Gischel, who is the CEO of the association Atscale.
Thank you, and hi everyone.
Muchas gracias.
Afternoon, good morning maybe still to some of you. My name is Pascal Bielefeld. I'm the CEO of Atscale, the global partnership for assistive technology hosted by UNOPS. It's really an honor to be part of this closing ceremony today after this amazing day-long youth summit, the first of its kind. I too believe in a disability inclusive future. And today it's shown us just how much we have to learn from young people and organizations led by youth with disabilities. You've told inspiring stories of how you've overcome adversity and leveraged opportunities, including thanks to access to assistive technology. Your stories remind us that actually having access to AT can make the difference between failure or success in school, or between a job or unemployment, between a life of opportunity or a life of dependency. I listened today to many of the sessions across many of the regions with growing admiration, and heard really a voice of hope. A global wave of inclusion is how one of you termed it, of making dreams come true, of joy at what has been accomplished. But I also heard a voice of caution, that we cannot take any gain for granted, that ignorance and stigma are still too pervasive today, that without access to adapted AT based on personal needs, meaningful participation is impossible. In short, much still needs to be done. And a lot will depend on you leading this. I was also struck by one young woman who rightly pointed out that if society today expects everyone to work, then that opportunity must be made equally available to all. Everyone must be given a fair chance. I joined Atscale recently because I believe in the tremendous power of partnership. For those of you who don't know us yet, Atscale is a new cross-sector partnership which brings together donors, governments of program countries, organizations of people with disabilities, NGOs, and multilateral organizations like WHO and UNICEF. With the resources that we mobilize, we make catalytic investments at global and country level that enable access to appropriate assistive technologies. Innovators have always designed assistive technology to help people function better. From the invention of the crutch in ancient Egypt to Baha'i tablets today, excitingly, we see this rate of innovation increasing, while the time it takes for them to reach the people in need decreases. There is really today a momentum towards a real step change in the use of assistive technology. And we're going to try at Atscale to accelerate this trend by supporting innovations, high tech and low tech, in services, in products, in software, in local production. And we know youth are key contributors and should be engaged in the design, testing, and implementation of all AT projects. As a partnership, we're committed to meaningful, effective, and informed stakeholder engagement in the design and implementation of interventions. And this includes the active engagement of young people like yourselves. And in fact, we hope to engage with many of you again in the very, very near future. We fully support your calls in the Charter for Change to revolutionize, as you write, the design, availability, and affordability of appropriate, gender, and age-sensitive assistive technology. And we're seeking youth champions to help us amplify these important messages. To conclude, Atscale aims to catalyze action to ensure that 500 million more people globally are reached with life-changing assistive technology by 2030. And I hope that you will join me and our partners at Atscale in our movement to unlock the potential of millions. I thank you very much.
Muchas gracias al señor Pascal.
Thank you, Mr. Pascal. I want to present the video from Ida Define, who is our fourth speaker this afternoon, to see if he is ready.
Dear all, my name is Ida Tesfaye, and I
Hola,
am the
soy Ida.
Secretary General of Youth Mental Health Norway. I am a 31-year-old Black woman. I live with bipolar disorder. I am an advocate for mental health and disability inclusion. I am a mother, a published author, and I like to think that I'm a good friend. And I find myself reflecting over what this virus has inflicted upon us all. What it has cost us, not only in paid work, but in memories, friendships, health, and learning. Vulnerable groups have become even more vulnerable during the pandemic. Estimates from UNESCO tells us that 11 million girls will not return to school. Domestic violence has risen to new levels. Those of us with disabilities have experienced services being disrupted, remote learning processes not being suited to our needs, and poor access to information about how to protect ourselves from the virus. In every part of the world, be it rich or poor countries, mental health conditions and the lack of caring responses has caused significant suffering for children and young people. We need more time. We need more time to collect data before we can say something definite about how the pandemic have impacted the mental well-being of the world's youth. But we know their stories. Every year, almost 46,000 children between 10 and 19 years end their own lives. Families and friends are left behind with all the questions, and in many cases, due to the stigma, they are also left with shame. That is not acceptable. We need to make the world a better place for all of us. A place where it is as natural to seek help for mental health conditions as it is to seek help for physical ones. This is especially important in the disability movement. Because while mental illness is recognized as a disability on its own, those of us with disabilities are more likely to have a mental illness in addition to our other disabilities. So, back when Corona was just a beer, we knew that time to invest in mental health was long overdue. Now it's overdue. On a world basis, 2% of national health budgets are spent on mental health. 2%. 50% of the population will most likely experience a mental health problem in their lifetime. I do not think we need a genius to do the math. It does not add up. If we are going to reach the goal of leaving no one behind, world leaders need to pay attention to the second leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-olds. But I am hopeful. I have seen every single video of the 30 Days of Youth campaign, and I have felt so proud to be part of this movement. So many of you have talked about the challenges you have faced and are still facing. And what I see is a bunch of motivated, bright young people who will not waver in pursuit of the rights and in turn the rights of others. We will continue to fight and push for change in our families, organizations, communities, and countries. And we will support each other during hard times and celebrate each other's successes. I hope you have all enjoyed GDS Youth. From my organization to yours, it has been a pleasure to work with you. Thank you so much for your many contributions. Without you, GDS Youth would not be an event for youth by youth. Thank you.
Muchas gracias por compartirnos el video.
Thank you very much for sharing your video for this important youth summit. I think it was a very encouraging and animated message. I wanted to know whether Antonio Palma is here with us so we can retake communication with him.
Antonio, ¿pudo solucionar el problema técnico?
Antonio, did you manage to sort out your technical issue?
Okay, parece que no.
Okay, it seems he didn't manage, so we're going to continue with Babili Densa, who is going to be here with us this afternoon.
Hola, ¿está aquí?
Hello, are you there?
Good afternoon and good evening. I hope you can all hear me. It's a pleasure to join you all at the Global Disability Youth Summit. And I'd like to say a big congratulations to pulling off such an incredible youth summit. It's been really great to listen to young people and their views, and also for them to actually have been able to be very much involved in planning and very much delivering this summit about the things that matter to them. It's been absolutely wonderful. I think we all agree. And I've been asked to actually to talk about the Global Disability 2018 Summit, which include me too, which I'm the executive director of, with a fantastic team and fantastic youth with disabilities. We organised a global disability children and young people's programme in 2018. But firstly, just to give you a bit of background, Include Me Too is a charity which works with and works alongside and works with disabled children and young people, and also their families from a diverse range of backgrounds, particularly minoritized and racialized communities, advocating and supporting the protection and implementation of disability and human rights, intersectionality, participation, equality, inclusion, and representation. Now, during the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, I think today is full circle really, and it's really been wonderful to see the journey and seeing how, youth have had a space, a very, and 24 hours, a key space leading up to the Global Disability Summit 2022 and filtering in through the things that really matter to them and ensuring the commitments that they have put forward are actually taken into account by all states and all stakeholders. So going back in terms of the historical way we are here today, during the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in London 2018, alongside with youth with disabilities, we were all advocating together for a space to be made available for youth with disabilities for the upcoming, at the time, the Global Disability Summit that was going to take place in 2018. We led the first ever Youth with Disabilities Roundtable event at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, where youth with disabilities articulated and shared the things that really matter in regards to the Sustainable Development Goals. And the next event was going to be the Global Disability Summit. And as you can imagine, quite rightly so, youth wanted to make sure that they were involved and they had their say. I have to say that the advocacy and their voices were certainly heard. But also what we were concerned about was that during the GDS 2018 programme was already set, and there was only, we only managed to get a small delegation of youth with disabilities in that short period of time to attend. So we used several platforms, which I will share with you in a moment. But more importantly, the Charter of Change commitments are also already agreed without the consultation of youth with disabilities. So alongside youth, they developed, alongside with a fantastic team, the Global Disability Summit Children and Young Persons programme in a very short time frame to ensure that children's voices were also included in this programme, as several organisations working actually raised the issue that they had some fantastic up and coming disability rights advocates who were children and who wanted to have a say and also be involved and express their opinions at this global summit. So we ensured we were inclusive and ensured that children and people were going to have the maximum opportunity by using a range of different platforms to have their say. And also what came from them was the fact that they also wanted to develop a charter of their own. They felt that they had not had a say in the Charter of Change, and it was so important that the things that mattered to them were referenced and were put together in commitments in a charter that they would produce. So within 7 days, there was a programme that was developed, and the programme included an online survey that was open to 11 to 30-year-olds, and also a video campaign where youth and children were able to share their aspirations, share the main barriers which they wish to see removed, and any important messages that they wanted to make sure that government heads and key stakeholders heard. During the Civil Society Forum in Global Disability 2018, there was young people with disabilities workshops led by them, talking about the issues that matter to them, that also they were followed through by a high-level roundtable event during the Global Disability Main Summit. And during this period of time, through the surveys, videos, even a live Twitter chat that took place during the Global Disability Summit, and young people were able to develop the Global Disability Children and Young People's Charter, which I'll mention more in a moment. But during the Global Disability Summit, young people, they actually presented the key messages about mobilizing youth with disabilities in these spaces. They're establishing youth-led disability networks and forums, increasing their capacity to be in charge of their futures and their roles as innovators and change makers and architects of their future. There was also video pledges from key stakeholders supporting the idea of a Global Disability Children and Young People's Charter. And the charter that was formulated had 12 key commitments on issues that were shared during the pre and during the Global Disability Summit. And some of these key stakeholders are also part of our co-hosts. For UNICEF, we had representation from UNICEF, from ministers that were attending the Global Disability Summit, and also from IDA, to name a few. The young people that were involved with having their say at the Global Disability Summit represented 23 countries, and they were able to talk about the things that mattered to them in the 6 themes at the summit, the changes they wanted to see, and the challenges and barriers they experienced regarding their inclusion and opportunities for leadership. And also, we also wanted to make sure that it was highlighted for those that are underrepresented within the disability space and within the youth movement as well. The 12 commitments of the Global Disability Children and Young People's Charter reflects and underpins the CRPD and the CIC and the Sustainable Development Goals. And it was felt strongly that this Convention Rights of the Child was also to be included, as it represents the rights of children and young people under the age of 18 years old. The commitments are reflected through the Youth Charter that has been discussed and formulated during this Global Youth Summit in 2022. Inclusive education, participation, representation and mobilizing youth, gender equality, digital and technology, economic empowerment and employment opportunities, removing stigma and discrimination, humanitarian crisis, legislation and policies that further their rights as right holders, as young people and children with disabilities. The Global Disability Children and Young People's Charter then went on to be launched at the United Nations Conference of State Parties in June 2019. And it was great to have conversations about having a youth summit leading from the Global Disability Summit. You could see that there was energy and youth were wanted an opportunity to be able to be in these spaces and have their say. And so it's so fantastic to see that what's come from 4 years ago, we are here today celebrating the youth summit that's taken place over the last 24 hours. But also, what came from that, when youth get the opportunity to have a say and mobilize and recognize their power as right holders, one of the things that came out of that Global Disability Summit in 2018 was a formulation of the Commonwealth Children Youth with Disabilities Programme. And this was because out of the 23 countries of children and young people who contributed, 20 of those countries were from the Commonwealth. And youth with disabilities recognize that within the Commonwealth space itself, and the Commonwealth has a membership of 54 countries, within that space itself, there was no space for them. And since then, the Commonwealth Children Youth Disability Network has had a reach for over 42 countries. Furthermore, the Commonwealth Secretariat has So the Commonwealth Secretariat acknowledged the
Sorry,
charter.
Fanny. We don't have more time. Can you close?
Can I wrap up?
your
Certainly.
exposition?
Certainly. So in terms of call for action, what we can tell you is that we feel that there needs to be a build up from previous efforts. Let's not erase all the efforts to date. So it'd be great to build upon youth efforts, the Youth Charter today, the Global Disability Children and Young People's Charter, the COVID-19 Children and Young People Statement and recommendations as well, and basically move forward in pulling in all the efforts that have been pulled together to date. And just on two more things, I'm going to be very quick. What I can let you know is there's a Commonwealth Heads of Government
I'm sorry, but we'll really give the floor to the next speakers.
Sorry,
thank you very much. Thank you, Parmi. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Back to the moderator. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Many thanks, Parmi, for your passionate words. Many thanks for, unfortunately, we didn't have enough time. Lots of people also would like to participate in the meeting. That's why I had to cut you off. Can you now confirm if we have the video, the closing video? Or how do we continue? Could you please indicate how to proceed?
Yes, we played the last video and we will wrap up.
Okay, thank you. Bueno, vamos a ver
okay,
el último video.
Let's watch the last video of the Charter of Youth of the Global Disability Youth Summit 2022.
To sign or endorse this call for action, please email summit@idasecretariat.org with the full name of your organization.
See the chair, give all kids right start, free your mind, free your soul. Open up your heart, in the one we live today. There are people who swear, the one we are, the one we be.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Everyone should see we are together, working for the child. Health is safe and eating well, educated. I don't think that's so wide.
Now I stand easy, and I'm there to think we all know. But after school people, would you ever call him slow? Alexander Graham Bell, not that ringtone very well. Thomas said this song was cool. Got the light bulb and he no fool. Stevie Wonder, Helen Killer. FDR, well, he was stellar. Louis Braille, he was 15. Made an alphabet supreme. So my point is clear. Please don't judge, you'll cost too deep.
To all of the people around us, we say it's ability. It's about ability, not if you hear or see. Yeah, ability. I got brothers, sisters with me. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Ability. You don't have to get up to dance.
Living life is fun, but it's known for some who are not given fair and equal chance. It's our job to give a hope for the future and to take a stand. And to take a stand. Start facing you, wrong things to do.
to get up to dance.
Para disfrutar los elementos de accesibilidad del corto animado Requesón, descargue
Gracias.
Many thanks.
Stacy.
Many thanks for sharing with us this video, this last video. There's some comments regarding access, how to access this video. I think it's because the song was in English. I'm not sure, Stacy, if you'd like to make a general comment regarding this video, and then we can proceed with our last speaker of the night.
Thank you, Matthias. We can invite our last speaker.
Okay, perfecto. Bueno, vamos a para
Okay, in order to close Disability Youth Summit in the youth section of this GDS, I'd like to invite the Secretary General of the Global GDS, Mr. Jose Vieira, and above all, I'd like to thank all your presence and your support during this last panel.
I would first of all thanks the organizers for inviting me to this closing part of the event. And let me say one very important thing for me. In many events, usually we get the message that we need to inspire the new generation. We need to share with the younger generation what are the advantages or the added value that they can bring to the disability right movement. And if there was a missing element to prove that rather than us inspiring the new generation has inspired us, is this Youth Disability Summit. The Youth Disability Summit that is concluding now has proven to be not only a good example of what young people can achieve, but also how the process was conducted. When we started to think the GDS 2022, and we had the early stage idea of also hosting a global disability summit for young people, of a youth disability summit, we didn't know exactly how that was going to look like. And we actually were very conservative, as it cannot be otherwise for those like me who are a bit older and yet need to understand new ways of communication, new ways of interaction. And so we were thinking that maybe a 3-4 hour event, bringing speakers to talk to the young people, sharing our experiences, telling the new generation what should be the agenda, etc., was going to be the goal of the Youth Disability Summit. And very fortunately, that was not the case. That was exactly the opposite to what we were thinking it was going to happen, and it ended up happening. From the second that we asked the IDA Youth Network to start working on the Global Disability Summit for youth, you taught us that it is impossible to organize anything if we don't do it in partnership. So you went out and you partner. And you partner not only with such relevant organizations like UNICEF or Atlas in Norway, but actually you challenge many partners by saying, if you want to be part of this event, you have to share our vision and values. And in that exercise of challenging partners, you are already advocating for our rights. You are already saying to the world, this is how we want to shape our future. But that was not enough for you. You then realized that along with good partners, you needed to bring to the table not issues that are considered important by a reduced number of people thinking around a table in a global north city, but rather to be the result of a consultative process. So you went out and started listening, something that more and more is hard to find. Spaces where you can be heard, where your perspective can be considered. But that was not enough either for you. You then said, we have good partners. We have heard what the young community wants to talk about, but now it is time to give sufficient space for young people with disabilities to share what they wanted to say. And that's where I believe came this idea that we never thought of, which is a 24 hours long event. 24 hours long event, I cannot remember if we ever had one in the disability rights movement. Probably yes. And by this, I'm not saying that we are the only one who did this, or you were the only one doing this. But what I'm sure, this is the first time ever, is that you gave sufficient space for bringing your perspective, for making your voice heard in a multiple way setting, including languages, including accessibility, respecting something that we always advocate for and is not usually common to see, which is intersectionality. You managed to create the space where young people with disabilities, through their representative organizations, came together and shared what you wanted to say. But if all those things were enough, you always wanted something else. And such ambition, it's fantastic. Having an ambitious vision of what you want to achieve is exactly what we want. And that was that you managed to say to the rest of the disability rights movement, we are not the future, we are the present. We are not waiting for you, older people, to give us the chance to take over and start doing. We are already doing. And this is exactly what inspired me the most. The idea that I'm taking away from this youth summit is that this is a non-stoppable, unstoppable movement. The GDS Youth Summit was only a global opportunity to come together as young people with disabilities and maybe formalize even more what exists out there, and that is the unstoppable young movement of persons with disabilities. That's what inspired me the most. Thank you for giving us the chance to share with you what you have to say. Thank you for inspiring us. And we will try to do the best we can. Maybe we will not succeed, but even if we are not successful, I can reassure you that we will do our best to leave you with something better than what we received a long time ago. Thank you.
Many thanks, Jose, for your message, for your speech. I think it's been very inspirational. It's described perfectly all this process, which is the Global Disability Youth Summit by the youth and for the youth. Now I'd like to invite all the interested parties to this call of action, and we've seen that in the chat box. Who, if you want to participate in the Youth Caucus, can do connected with Gula Koka. Many thanks to you all for sharing your time with us. Greetings.
Thank you to all the interpreters.
Muchísimas gracias a todos los intérpretes. Con esto podemos clausurar la reunión. Con eso
Thank you very much for your
hemos
tireless.
finalizado. Muchas gracias a todos.
And the organizers, of course.
Muchas gracias obviamente también a los organizadores.